As we commemorate the Holocaust and the terror in Auschwitz 80 years ago today, we call on all peace-loving and humane people to pledge that such terrible inhumanity of man against man must never happen again. The Holocaust. Yes, that is a terrible event. How many Europeans can still clearly remember and reflect on this terrible past? The memory of the Holocaust is fading in the minds of many Europeans and people in the West. What a shame. Holocaust, a word synonymous with unimaginable horrors, with systematic extermination and industrialized murder. The Holocaust is a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for evil, a dark stain on the conscience of Europe and the world. Auschwitz, Poland, January 27th. Auschwitz survivors warned on Monday of the dangers of rising antisemitism and xenophobia in Europe. They commemorated the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi German extermination camp by Soviet troops at one of the last gatherings of those who experienced the horrors of the camp. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, King Charles of Britain, French President Emmanuel Macron, Polish President Andrzej Duda, and many other leaders attended the ceremony at the site of the camp, which Nazi Germany built in occupied Poland during World War II to murder European Jews on a massive scale. This event serves as a reminder of a dark chapter in European history that must never be repeated, but as the years pass and living memory fades, the horrific reality of the Holocaust risks becoming a distant echo, a historical footnote for younger generations. The situation is aggravated by rising nationalism in Europe and beyond. Nazi terror is downplayed, and the atrocities of the past are glorified with euphemisms. This historical amnesia is evident in the rhetoric of far-right parties and organizations. Right-wing parties like the AfD, Germany, the Swiss People's Party, Switzerland, and the ruling party in Italy, Brothers of Italy League, exploit national sentiments and xenophobia. The list goes on. In some countries, nationalist opposition parties play a significant role in politics, such as the French National Rally and La France Insoumise, Vox in Spain, Elleniki Lisi in Greece, the Serbian parties Zavetnici and Deveri, Chega in Portugal, the Dutch PVV and Forum for Democracy. This is not just about forgetting dates or names. It is about a dangerous erosion of understanding, a growing gap between the lived experiences of the survivors and the historical awareness of those who have known only peace and relative prosperity. It is about the lessons of the Holocaust, lessons about the fragility of tolerance, the seductive nature of hate, and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked prejudice being lost. Across Europe, the word Holocaust is losing its power, its meaning diluted by the passage of time and the competing narratives of the modern world. For many young people, the Holocaust is just another historical event, a distant tragedy that feels irrelevant to their lives. This distance, this growing gap in understanding is deeply troubling, because in the fertile ground of ignorance, the seeds of hatred are most easily sown. The Holocaust was not an accident of history. It was the culmination of a deliberate, systematic campaign of persecution and dehumanization, fueled by antisemitism and a toxic mix of political opportunism and societal indifference. To forget the Holocaust is to forget the victims, to diminish their suffering, and to risk repeating the mistakes of the past. The urgency of this situation cannot be overstated. We are at a crossroads in history where the eyewitnesses to the horrors of the Holocaust are dwindling. Soon, there will be no one left to bear witness. The responsibility of remembrance now falls on the younger generations. We must educate ourselves and future generations about the dangers of prejudice and discrimination. The lessons of the Holocaust are timeless warnings about the fragility of civilization. We must confront the horrors of the Holocaust with honesty and courage. To do anything less would be to betray the memory of the victims. There is too much at stake to allow for apathy or indifference. The rise of extremist ideologies and hate speech serves as a stark reminder that the lessons of the Holocaust are as relevant today as they ever were. The lack of knowledge about the Holocaust among young people is not just a statistical anomaly, it's a symptom of a much deeper problem, a societal amnesia that threatens the very fabric of our shared humanity. If we fail to combat this growing ignorance, if we allow the memory of the Holocaust to fade, we risk sleepwalking into a future where the horrors of the past could repeat themselves. This is not about dwelling on the past or perpetuating a culture of guilt. It's about understanding the root causes of hatred, recognizing the warning signs of intolerance and discrimination, and equipping future generations with the knowledge and critical thinking skills to confront prejudice in all its forms. The Holocaust was a turning point in human history, a stark reminder of the depths of depravity to which humanity can sink when hatred and intolerance are allowed to flourish. It is a bitter lesson about the importance of vigilance, the dangers of indifference, and the fragility of peace. The responsibility to remember, to learn, and to act lies with each and every one of us. We must ensure that the lessons of the Holocaust are never forgotten, that the memory of the victims is honored, and that future generations understand the importance of building a just and compassionate world. The warning signs have been flashing for a while, but recent studies paint a particularly grim picture of European youth's awareness of the Holocaust. The results are not just concerning, they're a wake-up call, a clear indication that we are failing in our duty to educate younger generations about the horrors of the past. A 2023 survey by the Claims Conference, a global organization that advocates for Holocaust survivors' compensation, found that a significant percentage of young adults in several European countries lack even a basic understanding of the Holocaust. The study, which surveyed people aged 18 to 39 in 7 countries, revealed a worrying lack of knowledge about key historical facts and figures. In France, for example, a shocking 20% of those surveyed said they had never even heard the word Holocaust. A similar level of ignorance was found in Austria, where 18% of respondents were unfamiliar with the term. These figures represent not just a gap in historical knowledge, but a fundamental disconnect from a defining event of the 20th century. These findings are not isolated incidents. A 2022 study by the Institute for Jewish Policy Research found that nearly 1 in 5 British adults under 40 believes the Holocaust has been exaggerated or is even a myth. The study also revealed widespread ignorance about the scale of the genocide, with many respondents significantly underestimating the number of victims. The problem goes beyond simply not knowing the word Holocaust. It speaks to a broader erosion of understanding, a fading familiarity with the vocabulary of horror that shaped this dark chapter in human history. Words like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor, names that should be forever etched in our collective memory, are losing their meaning for many young people. The Claims Conference survey found that a significant portion of those asked had trouble identifying key figures like Heinrich Himmler, the architect of the Holocaust, or Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi regime's propaganda chief. In Austria, for example, 42% of those surveyed couldn't name a single Nazi concentration camp or ghetto. This lack of basic knowledge isn't just about failing a history test. It represents a dangerous disconnect from the reality of what happened. The dwindling number of Holocaust survivors means first-hand accounts, those powerful testimonies that once served as visceral reminders of the human cost of hate, are becoming increasingly rare. As these voices fade, so too does the emotional resonance of the Holocaust for younger generations. This growing disconnect between historical events and their emotional impact is especially worrying. Without an understanding of the human suffering at the heart of the Holocaust, it risks becoming an abstract concept, a distant event with little relevance to the lives of young people today. Even though the problem of not knowing about the Holocaust is widespread, it's not the same everywhere. The survey by the Claims Conference found big differences in what people know about the Holocaust from one country to another, and even within different groups of people in the same country. In the United States, for example, awareness of the Holocaust is pretty high, with 96% of people saying they've heard of it. But even in countries where teaching about the Holocaust has always been a big deal, there are worrying signs that things are slipping. A 2020 survey in Germany found that almost 1 in 3 young Germans think their country has done enough to make up for its Nazi past. This suggests a growing complacency and a fading sense of responsibility to remember. Things are especially troubling in Eastern Europe, where governments often encourage Holocaust denial and distortion. In countries like Poland and Hungary, we're seeing more and more twisted versions of history that downplay the role of local collaborators or even portray Jewish people as the ones who committed terrible war crimes. This twisting of history for political gain is a serious threat to Holocaust remembrance. By changing the historical record and downplaying the suffering of the victims, these twisted accounts try to whitewash the past and let those responsible for the horrors of the Holocaust off the hook. The statistics on Holocaust ignorance are alarming, but they only tell part of the story. Beneath the surface of these numbers lies a deeper crisis, a crisis of empathy, a dwindling ability to understand and connect with the suffering of others. This empathy deficit is fueled by a number of factors, including the rise of social media, which often promotes superficial connections and a desensitization to violence. The increasing polarization of society, which creates echo chambers and reinforces existing prejudices, and the sheer volume of information competing for our attention, which can make it difficult to engage deeply with complex and challenging topics like the Holocaust. This lack of empathy is especially dangerous because it creates a breeding ground for prejudice and discrimination. When we lose sight of the humanity of others, it becomes easier to dehumanize them, to see them as objects of fear or hatred rather than as individuals deserving of our compassion and respect. The Holocaust was not just a failure of institutions or ideologies, it was a failure of empathy, a breakdown of human connection on a massive scale. To prevent such atrocities from happening again, we must cultivate empathy in ourselves and in future generations. The consequences of this growing historical amnesia are far-reaching and potentially devastating. When societies forget their past, they are doomed to repeat it. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a fundamental truth confirmed time and again throughout history. The Holocaust stands as a stark reminder of what can happen when hatred and intolerance are allowed to thrive unchecked. It is a warning from history that we ignore at our own peril. The rise of far-right movements in Europe and elsewhere, fueled by xenophobia, racism and antisemitism, is a chilling reminder that the forces that gave rise to the Holocaust are still very much alive today. Historical amnesia makes us vulnerable to the same poisonous ideologies that plunged Europe into darkness in the 20th century. Think about Kristallnacht or the book burnings. Those were the early warning signs. It weakens our defenses against hatred and makes it easier for extremists to exploit fear and ignorance for their own ends. Furthermore, forgetting the Holocaust diminishes the victims of those who fought against Nazi tyranny and those who perished in the camps. It dishonors their memory and undermines the importance of their stories in shaping a more just and compassionate world. Young people not knowing about the Holocaust is a dangerous sign of the bigger problem in our society. This lack of awareness is a crack in the foundation of our shared humanity. One worrying result is the erosion of tolerance. When knowledge of the Holocaust fades, so does understanding of its causes. Intolerance thrives in the fertile ground of ignorance. The Holocaust reminds us of how fragile tolerance is. As awareness of the Holocaust fades, another disturbing trend emerges: the normalization of hate. This doesn't necessarily mean societies are becoming more hateful, but rather that expressions of hate, once considered unacceptable, are increasingly tolerated and even accepted. This normalization takes many forms. It can be as subtle as a derogatory remark about a minority group, or as blatant as a racist slur shouted in public. It can be the sharing of hateful content online, often disguised as humor or free speech. or the vandalism of places of worship and memorials. The danger of this normalization is that it desensitizes individuals to hate, making it easier for them to accept and even spread it. When hateful rhetoric becomes commonplace, it loses its power to shock and outrage, gradually becoming an accepted part of public discourse. This normalization of hate is especially dangerous online, where anonymity and lack of accountability embolden individuals to express views they would never voice in person. Social media platforms, while valuable tools for connection and communication, can also become breeding grounds for hate speech and extremism, amplifying hateful messages and normalizing intolerance. The Holocaust reminds us that hate, left unchecked, can metastasize from words to deeds, from prejudice to persecution, from discrimination to extermination. The normalization of hate in any form is a slippery slope, a dangerous descent toward the ideologies that led to the darkest chapter in human history. The consequences of ignoring the Holocaust go way beyond just historical understanding. They strike at the very heart of democratic societies. Democracy thrives on informed and engaged citizens who understand the value of tolerance, respect for human rights, and the rule of law. When knowledge of the Holocaust fades, so too does the understanding of democracy's fragility and the constant vigilance required to protect it from tyranny. The Holocaust wasn't simply the failure of one nation or one ideology, it was a failure of humanity, a stark reminder of what can happen when democratic institutions crumble and citizens fail to uphold the values upon which their societies are built. Forgetting history creates a dangerous void, a space where disinformation, propaganda, and extremist ideologies can take root and flourish. Without the foundation of historical knowledge, citizens become more vulnerable to manipulation by demagogues and authoritarian figures who exploit fear, division, and ignorance for their own gain. The rise of populist and nationalist movements in many parts of the world, fueled by xenophobia, antisemitism, and the rejection of democratic norms, is a chilling reminder of democracy's fragility and the ever-present threat of extremism. The Holocaust is a grave warning that democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires active participation, critical thinking, and a willingness to defend its values against all threats. Remembering the Holocaust is everyone's job. It starts with education and fighting against all kinds of hate. Across Europe, far-right ideologies are experiencing a resurgence. This resurgence is fueled by economic anxieties and social divisions. The rise of these movements reminds us that the demons of the past are not defeated. The far right takes advantage of ignorance and twists history. They blame immigrants and minorities and stir up fears about cultural change. Their most powerful weapon is Holocaust denial, which plays on ignorance to spread hate. Holocaust distortion and denial have many faces. The internet has become a breeding ground for this distortion. This weaponization of history threatens the memory of the Holocaust and the truth. Not knowing about the Holocaust makes young people vulnerable to extremist beliefs. This lack of knowledge creates a dangerous empty space where hate and intolerance can grow. The fight against the resurgence of right-wing extremism demands education and tackling the root causes of extremism. We must fight inequality and promote social inclusion. The fight against hate requires our unwavering commitment. Education is key to fighting growing ignorance and hate. Teaching about the Holocaust must be done with empathy and in a way that keeps students interested. It empowers students to confront injustice and build a better future. Holocaust education needs to reach both the head and the heart. Stories from people who lived through it, along with technology, can make history come alive. The goal is to learn from the past to build a better future. Future generations must keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. Student initiatives and meeting with survivors are essential. Supporting Holocaust museums and educational institutions is crucial. Remembering the Holocaust is our shared responsibility. Together we can prevent future atrocities. Education and empathy are the key to a more just and peaceful world. Remembering the Holocaust is an act of resistance against darkness. We honor the victims and celebrate the courage of those who resisted. Their stories light our way to a better future. The responsibility to remember, to learn, and to act is now ours. We are the inheritors of a difficult legacy and must ensure that the horrors of the Holocaust never happen again. This is a call to action, to shape a future where such atrocities never happen again. It is a collective responsibility that goes beyond borders, cultures, and ideologies. We must stand united against hate, prejudice, and discrimination. Education is our strongest weapon against ignorance and prejudice. Remember the images of Europe in the 1940s. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Let's equip future generations with the knowledge and empathy to fight injustice. We vow to never let history repeat itself. To support our mission of remembrance and education, please share, comment, and subscribe to our channel.